Welcome to the neon carnival of modern dating, where every swipe is either a promise or a prelude to therapy. Think of dating apps as haunted houses. You walk in hoping for a thrill, maybe some romance, but what you actually get is a series of jump scares you should have seen coming. The faceless profile, the guy still clutching a red Solo cup in all his photos, or worse, the gym selfie with motivational hashtags. It's a funhouse mirror maze of desire, disappointment, and bad lighting. And the best part? You paid for this privilege. Not just with your dignity, but probably with a subscription fee. Because yes, in late-stage capitalism, even love is a premium feature. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." Imagine how dizzy he'd be staring at an endless carousel of potential soulmates, while sitting pantsless on his couch, trying to decide between Chinese takeout and Italian, all while debating if just looking for vibes is worth the risk. Freedom? Try existential vertigo with push notifications. Here's the cruel paradox. The more options you have, the lonelier you feel. Psychologist Barry Schwartz dubbed this the paradox of choice. He argued that too many options don't liberate us. They paralyze us. In other words, dating apps aren't expanding your chances at love. They're handing you a buffet of mediocrity, where the dessert table's always empty. You don't feel satisfied. You feel duped. And yet, you keep filling your plate. Let's be honest, downloading a dating app is not the act of a hopeless romantic. It's the modern ritual of the mildly desperate. It's the equivalent of saying, I'm not willing to die alone, but I'm also not willing to leave my apartment. The apps know this. That's why they don't sell you love. They sell you possibility. They whisper, maybe the next swipe, maybe the next profile. It's basically a slot machine with better lighting. And if you think I'm exaggerating, Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist, studied the brain activity of people swiping on Tinder and found the same dopamine surges you'd see in a gambling addict pulling a lever in Vegas. You're not finding love, you're feeding an addiction. The jackpot is attention, validation, maybe sex. The house always wins, and in this house, the ghosts wear cologne. So before we tour the 7 exhibits of this dating app haunted house, remember this: you're not walking into a cathedral of romance. You're strapping into a roller coaster built by engineers who profit from keeping you single just long enough to keep swiping. As Alain de Botton reminds us, we fall in love because love is the closest thing to home. Unfortunately, on dating apps, home usually comes furnished with red flags and an unpaid therapy bill. Still, you swipe because deep down, maybe haunted houses are fun. At least until you realise you're the one being hunted. There's nothing quite like the ghost broker. One moment, they're flooding your phone with good morning texts, sending memes that almost make you believe in serotonin, and crafting long, late-night messages that read like rejected drafts of romantic poetry. Then, silence. Not a gradual tapering off, not even the courtesy of a polite fade, just a cold, brutal disappearance, like Houdini dipped in Axe body spray. If dating apps are a stock exchange for fleeting affection, the ghost broker is the shady trader who convinces you to invest, drives the price up, and then vanishes right before the crash. The currency here isn't Bitcoin or bonds. It's your emotional availability. And congratulations, it just got shorted. Psychologists have been fascinated by this particular modern cruelty. A 2018 study by Gili Friedman in Social, Psychological and Personality Science revealed that ghosting is typically motivated by avoidance. People would rather vanish into thin air than endure the awkwardness of honesty. Translation: Your ghoster isn't a villain mastermind plotting to destroy your confidence. They're a conflict-averse coward, hoping you'll delete yourself so they don't have to send a text. They didn't lose interest. They lost nerve. Still, knowing that doesn't soften the sting. Being ghosted is like getting fired from an unpaid internship you didn't even want. One day you're so funny, lol, and can't wait to see you again. The next day you're a digital poltergeist screaming into the void of unread messages. The real kicker: ghosting has become so normalised it's practically etiquette. Once upon a time, the height of rudeness was not calling after a date. Now, we've weaponised silence. It's not enough to reject. You must evaporate. As sociologist Eva Illouz notes in Cold Intimacies, technology hasn't killed emotion, it has refrigerated it. What once required courage is now outsourced to the block button. Why should you run from the ghost broker? Because the ghosting pattern isn't random. It's systemic. People who ghost once tend to ghost again, and not just in dating. They'll ghost their jobs, their friends, maybe even their dentist appointments. Reliability isn't their brand, avoidance is. And dating someone who treats communication like a horror movie jump scare is essentially signing up to be haunted. But let's not kid ourselves. Ghosting also thrives because of the architecture of the apps themselves. With an endless buffet of potential matches, why bother with closure? Why invest in a goodbye when a fresh hello is just a swipe away? It's the paradox of abundance. Too many choices make people less accountable. As philosopher Zygmunt Bauman argued in Liquid Love, modern intimacy is marked by connections that are easily entered and easily abandoned. Ghosting isn't an anomaly, it's the feature, not the bug. Here's the cruelest twist. Sometimes ghosting works precisely because it's ambiguous. It leaves you second guessing. Was it you? Did they die? Are they in jail? Did they spontaneously combust while typing, "Haha, you're cute"? That uncertainty is addictive. It keeps you checking your phone, rereading old texts like ancient runes, waiting for a sign. In psychological terms, it's intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that keeps gamblers hooked on slot machines. The payout might never come, but the possibility is enough to keep you tethered. And that's the danger. Ghosters don't just waste your time. They colonize your mental real estate. They linger in your head, replayed like a song you hate but can't skip. They thrive in your confusion. And while you're stuck drafting imaginary comebacks for texts you'll never send, they're already halfway through traumatizing their next victim. So here's the brutal truth. Ghosting's less about cruelty than convenience. They don't care enough to say goodbye. And that should tell you everything. You're not worth the courtesy of closure to them, which means they are not worth the courtesy of your continued attention. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre famously said, "Hell is other people." He clearly hadn't been ghosted, or he would have amended it to, "Hell is other people ignoring you after sexting for 3 weeks straight." The paradox of the ghost broker is simple. The very act of disappearing makes them unforgettable. They exit your life without warning, but they linger in your mind longer than they ever deserved, which means the only way to exorcise them is to refuse to play host. So, when you meet the ghost broker, and you will, don't chase shadows, don't beg for closure, don't write your own eulogy, just run. Because the only thing worse than being haunted is getting used to the haunting. There are people you meet on dating apps who make you wonder if you accidentally logged into the wrong platform. Instead of flirty banter, you're hit with a resume. Their bio reads like a press release. MBA, CEO, marathon finisher, dog dad, fluent in Mandarin, saving the planet. Swipe through their photos and it's a predictable slideshow of TEDx stages, candid shots in Patagonia vests and a suspicious number of black tie galas. You half expect their profile to end with references available upon request. This is not a date, this is a job interview. And congratulations, you just applied to be their unpaid intern in the field of ego maintenance. The walking LinkedIn profile is allergic to vulnerability but addicted to achievements. They believe that if they list enough accolades, you'll be seduced by their brand the way investors are seduced by PowerPoint decks filled with buzzwords like disruptive and synergy. You don't get to know them, you get to know their portfolio. Psychologists call this self-enhancement, the tendency to exaggerate or showcase positive traits to make oneself more appealing. A 2019 study in personality and individual differences found that dating app users often strategically curate profiles to highlight success and status markers. In theory, this makes sense. Evolutionary psychology suggests that displaying resources signals fitness. But in practice, you end up with a human LinkedIn feed where romance is replaced by networking. Nietzsche once warned, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he does not become a monster." He was talking about existential battles, but the walking LinkedIn profile has clearly turned their own life into a TED Talk about overcoming monsters. And guess who has to clap politely? You. Here's the real danger. People like this don't actually want a partner. They want a witness. Someone to nod along while they recount their triumphs. Someone to admire their curated narrative. Dating them is like attending an awards ceremony where the same person wins every category and gives increasingly long speeches. At first you clap, then you wonder why you're in the audience at all. Worse, they often disguise their arrogance as humility. You'll see bios that say things like, "Just a small town kid now working at Google," or "Grateful to be featured in Forbes 30 under 30. That's not humility. That's a brag wearing a fake mustache. Sociologist Irving Goffman would call it impression management, the art of shaping perception. In the dating world, it's less art and more performance art gone wrong. The irony. They're often deeply insecure. The endless parade of achievements isn't about sharing joy, it's about filling a void. Studies in social psychology consistently show that people who lean on status signals for self-worth are often compensating for fragile egos. The louder the flex, the deeper the crack. You're not dating a titan of industry, you're dating a fragile PR campaign. So why should you run? Because being with someone like this isn't just exhausting, it's erasing. You stop existing as a person and start existing as an accessory, the supportive +1 in their highlight reel. Your stories become footnotes to theirs. Your victories get eclipsed. They'll post a photo of you two at dinner, but the caption will read, "Celebrating closing the biggest deal of my career." You're not a partner, you're an unpaid brand ambassador. And let's not forget, ambition doesn't necessarily translate into intimacy. Being driven is admirable, but intimacy requires slowing down, taking off the professional armor and letting someone see the messy parts. The walking LinkedIn profile doesn't do messy. They do polished. They do rehearsed. They do authenticity as a brand strategy, not as a human reality. And intimacy without authenticity, that's just a networking event with better lighting. As French philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "We are so presumptuous that we would wish to be known by all the world, and even by people who shall come after when we are dead." The walking LinkedIn profile doesn't just want to be known. They want to be remembered, archived and hashtagged. And you're supposed to clap along until death or burnout do you part. Here's the paradox. Their ambition might actually be attractive at first. You think, wow, this person has their life together. And maybe they do. But relationships aren't resumes, they're messy collaborations where failure, vulnerability, and imperfection matter just as much as success. The walking LinkedIn profile doesn't want collaboration. They want compliance. They want you to be impressed, not equal. Run, because one day you'll wake up and realise you haven't been dating a person. You've been dating a PowerPoint presentation, and no matter how many bullet points it has, it'll never tell the story of real love. You swipe and there it is, a profile stripped of all context. A name, maybe an age, and a blurry picture that could be them, their cousin, or possibly a JPEG artifact from 2003. The bio, absolutely nothing. Not a single word, sentence, or clue that this person has ever had a thought worth sharing. Just blank space, daring you to project your fantasies onto it. Welcome to the bio phantom. They're the Schrödinger's cat of dating apps. Simultaneously mysterious and lazy, simultaneously intriguing and infuriating. You don't know if they're enigmatic or just can't be bothered, and so you're left guessing. Are they secretive? Are they illiterate? Or do they genuinely believe that less is more when it comes to building human connection? Here's the thing, minimalism is chic when it comes to Scandinavian furniture. It's less charming when applied to your romantic resume. Imagine applying for a job with a blank CV and a blurry headshot. You'd be laughed out of the building. But in the lawless wasteland of dating apps, the bio phantom thrives. Proof that effort is optional and hope is eternal. The Pew Research Centre found that about 30% of online daters complain about profiles with too little information. That's nearly a third of the swiping population rolling their eyes at blank bios. Yet the bio phantom persists. Why? Because mystery is addictive. Our brains hate incomplete information. Psychologist George Loewenstein coined the term the information gap theory of curiosity. Basically, when you give people just enough to wonder, but not enough to answer, they become obsessed with filling in the blanks. The bio phantom weaponizes this. They lure you in by saying nothing, leaving you to imagine everything. The irony? That imagination rarely aligns with reality. You see the blank bio and think, maybe they're shy or witty but subtle. Maybe they're mysterious, deep, the kind of person who doesn't need words because they speak through actions. Fast forward 2 weeks and you discover they're not mysterious, they're just boring. The silence wasn't profound, it was empty. Their favourite hobby isn't meditating on the nature of existence, it's watching reruns of The Big Bang Theory and forgetting to answer texts. Philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein famously said, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." The bio phantom clearly took this as dating advice, but what Wittgenstein meant as a commentary on the limits of language has been tragically misapplied as, don't bother writing anything in your profile. Someone will still swipe. Why should you run from the bio phantom? Because building a connection requires at least some mutual disclosure. Relationships thrive on reciprocity. You show a little, they show a little. The bio phantom shows nothing, and nothing is not a foundation, it's a void. You can't fall in love with a silhouette. But let's be real. There's another reason the bio phantom leaves their canvas blank. Plausible deniability. With no words to analyse, they avoid giving you a reason to swipe left. No cheesy quotes, no bad jokes, no red flags. Just the illusion of potential. They're a dating Rorschach test, and you're the one projecting ink blots into something that looks like love. The deeper problem is that this behaviour reflects a broader cultural laziness. Apps have made dating so disposable that effort is seen as optional. Why craft a thoughtful profile when a half-decent photo will do? Why reveal anything real when the next match is seconds away? As sociologist Sherry Turkle argued in Alone Together, technology has created an environment where we present curated fragments of ourselves, not our full humanity. The bio phantom doesn't even bother with the fragments. Still, many people fall for them because the fantasy of mystery is easier to maintain than the disappointment of reality. It's Schrodinger's romance. As long as you don't meet, they could be perfect. But once you open the box, odds are it's just another catfish in a human suit. Here's the paradox. The biophantom feels like a blank slate you can project dreams onto, but in reality, they're just a void sucking in your time and attention. And no matter how much you hope, voids don't reciprocate. They don't text back, they don't open up, and they definitely don't turn into the soulful, enigmatic lover you imagined. As poet Rumi once wrote, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." With the biophantom, don't get lost in their silence. Know that their silence is already the cure. The answer is simple. Nothingness tells you everything. If they can't fill a profile, they won't fill your life. So when you stumble across the empty canvas, don't squint at the shadows and wonder what masterpiece could be hiding there. Swipe left. Because the only thing worse than chasing a ghost is dating one that never bothered to introduce itself. Some people bring flowers on a first date. The trauma dump truck brings their entire psychological landfill and tips it directly onto your lap before you've even ordered drinks. Within 5 minutes, you know their ex cheated on them twice, their father never hugged them, their landlord is Satan incarnate, and they have an IBS flare-up every time they get nervous. Congratulations, you're no longer a date, you're an unpaid therapist with a 2-drink minimum. Here's the wild part. They don't even see it as inappropriate. To them, oversharing is a shortcut to intimacy. Why waste months building trust when you can unload your entire backstory in one caffeine-fueled monologue at a coffee shop? It's emotional speed dating, except instead of charm and laughter, you're served trauma and tears. Psychologist Susan Johnson, a leading researcher in attachment theory, notes that vulnerability is indeed central to human connection. But here's the catch. Real vulnerability is gradual, reciprocal, and rooted in trust. Oversharing isn't vulnerability, it's a defense mechanism. By overwhelming you with too much, too soon, the trauma dump truck paradoxically avoids intimacy. If they dump everything on the table right away, they never risk the slow, terrifying process of being genuinely known. Think of it this way. Intimacy is like building a fire. You start small, with kindling and sparks. The trauma dump truck skips straight to dousing the logs in kerosene, tossing in a lit match, and then looking surprised when the whole thing explodes in your face. The worst part is how seductive it can feel in the moment. When someone bares their soul so quickly, you might mistake it for closeness. You think, wow, they trust me. But it's not trust. It's desperation. They're not choosing you as a confidant because you're special. They're unloading on you because you're present. You're a warm body with ears, and right now that's enough. And it doesn't stop after the first date. Oh no. Once you accept the initial dump, you're signed up for the subscription plan. Every conversation becomes a therapy session. Dinner dates dissolve into rants about their narcissistic ex. Morning texts morph into spirals about their crippling fear of abandonment. Before long, you're Googling, can emotional baggage cause actual back pain? While secretly wondering if you should bill them for your time, sociologist Eva Illouz writes in Why Love Hurts that modern relationships are often burdened by an expectation of emotional rescue. We don't just want partners, we want saviours. The trauma dump truck takes this to heart. They don't want companionship, they want salvation. And unless you've got a PhD in psychology and a decade of patience, you will fail that job spectacularly. Now here's the kicker. Trauma dumping is often framed as just being honest. And who can argue with honesty, right? But honesty without boundaries isn't noble. It's reckless. Imagine someone dumping a bag of nails onto the floor and saying, "I'm just being authentic about my mess." Authenticity doesn't excuse endangerment. Your emotional well-being shouldn't be collateral damage in their quest for catharsis. Philosopher Michel Foucault once argued that confession has become a modern ritual, a way of proving authenticity and seeking absolution. The trauma dump truck embodies this ritual. They confess not to connect, but to offload. And like any bad confessional, you walk away heavier, not lighter. Why should you run from the trauma dump truck? Because relationships should enhance your life, not suffocate it under the weight of someone else's unresolved baggage. Yes, everyone has wounds, but there's a vast difference between sharing them in time and weaponizing them as emotional currency. With the trauma dump truck, every interaction becomes a toll booth where the price is your energy, your patience, and eventually your sanity. The paradox is this: the trauma dump truck thinks they're being open, but their very openness prevents real connection. By unloading everything too quickly, they rob you of the chance to build trust, to earn those revelations, to grow into closeness. They're not pulling you into intimacy, they're pushing you into burnout. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "For one human being to love another, that is perhaps the most difficult of all our tasks." The trauma dump truck simplifies the task into an impossible assignment. Fix me now, love me anyway, carry all my baggage while I sprint ahead. And if you collapse under the weight, well, that just proves everyone always leaves. So when you spot the trauma dump truck revving up with a story about how their ex ruined their life before the appetizers even arrive, do yourself a favour. Step aside. Let them unload somewhere else. Because you are a person, not a landfill, and the only baggage you should carry on a date is the clutch or backpack you walked in with. The philosopher king of ghosting, a regal figure perched high on their velvet throne of unread receipts. You'll recognise them by their favourite weapon, silence. Not dramatic silence, not pensive silence, not even sexy, waiting to text you after 3 hours so I see mysterious silence. No, this is Olympic-level ghosting. One moment you're exchanging witty repartee about your mutual hatred of pineapple pizza, and the next you're staring at your phone like it's a Ouija board, waiting for signs of life from the other side. Let's be clear, this is not the casual forgetter, the busy professional who loses track of time. No, this is someone who treats ghosting as an art form, as if they're Kant himself, building an ethical system of ignoring you. They believe perhaps that not responding is a form of moral clarity, a gift to you, a declaration that, in fact, you deserve better. But somehow it never feels like a gift. It feels like abandonment dressed in philosophy. Ghosting has become such a cultural epidemic that psychologists actually have studies on it. A 2018 paper in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that people ghost because it seems easier than confrontation, which is a polite way of saying they're allergic to basic decency. Ghosting allows for avoidance, the authors wrote, and maintains one's comfort at the expense of another's closure. Translation: they sleep like babies while you scroll through their Instagram, wondering why they liked a picture of a goat but not you. And yet here's the kicker. Ghosting often says more about the ghoster than the ghosted. Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." The ghoster swims in infinite options, infinite swipes, infinite excuses. And their anxiety manifests as vanishing acts. They vanish because facing the weight of choice is unbearable. They vanish because you're not wrong for them. You're just not right enough to end their freedom. It's less about you, more about their inability to sit with discomfort. This is why ghosting feels so personal, yet so hollow. You're wounded, but you can't even locate the weapon. No argument, no insult, no final word to stitch together meaning. just silence, which is the cruelest kind of punctuation. Simone de Beauvoir called absence the most absolute form of presence, and ghosters have perfected the art. Their absence burns brighter than their actual existence ever did. But let's not forget, the philosopher king of ghosting is addicted to the quiet power of disappearance. Their logic whispers, why cause ripples when you can dissolve? Their cowardice masquerades as wisdom. Their comfort is maintained at your expense. And here's the paradox, they vanish, but in vanishing, they live rent-free in your head. They say nothing, yet every corner of your mind echoes with what they didn't say. So next time you're left on read, remember, it's not you. It's their own fear of finality, their desperate clinging to the illusion of infinite possibility. Ghosters don't just disappear from you, they disappear from themselves. And isn't that the saddest trick of all? If dating apps are the modern carnival of human performance, then the travel brochure is the glossy postcard stall. Except every postcard is of them, and every destination is a metaphor for how much better they want you to think their life is. They are not people, they are curated itineraries. Their dating profile doesn't begin with "hi" or "about me," but with a panoramic photo of them atop Machu Picchu, arms spread like a budget version of Christ the Redeemer. Swipe again and they're candidly sipping Aperol on a yacht, though you know it took 20 takes and one near slip into the Mediterranean. By the third photo, they're in front of the Eiffel Tower, leaning just so, the kind of lean that screams, I didn't just Google Paris pose ideas, okay? But here's the reality. The travel brochure isn't a world explorer. They're a slideshow salesman. The very mountains, oceans, and historic landmarks they pose against are not symbols of discovery, but weapons of seduction. They've turned geography into foreplay, and yet if you look closer, you'll notice a strange detail. Despite the 1,000 backdrops, their face remains the same. A frozen smile that says, if I stop grinning, the illusion will crack. Psychologist Daniel Gilbert once remarked, human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think they're finished. The travel brochure doesn't think they're finished. They think they're published. They are glossy, laminated, and available for distribution. Dating them feels less like romance and more like being tricked into a timeshare presentation. Let's talk about the bio. It's never love books, coffee, and good conversation. Oh no, it's a list of passport stamps disguised as a personality. Bali, Iceland, Peru, Tokyo. You're not swiping on a person. You're swiping on TripAdvisor with legs. And God forbid you ask them what they actually do for a living. They'll dodge it with, I work remotely, which most likely is code for my parents wire money, and I send emails from airport lounges to keep the illusion alive. In conversation, the travel brochure has one topic, and one topic only. Themselves, framed against the world. You'll ask how their week was, and instead of pretty good, you'll get, well, when I was in Tulum. Every anecdote begins with an exotic location, as if mere geography is the proof of their superiority. You'll realise quickly that you're not dating them, you're auditioning for a supporting role in their never-ending slideshow. But the true tragedy of the travel brochure is not their obsession with self-promotion, it's their emptiness. Strip away the monuments, the palm trees, the cocktails in Santorini. And what's left? Someone who's terrified that their ordinary isn't enough. They need a backdrop to be interesting, a horizon to look deep, a boarding pass to prove existence. And deep down, they know that the real journey, the one inward, the one into vulnerability and honesty, is a flight they've never booked. Sociologist Irving Goffman, who wrote about the presentation of self, would have had a field day here. The travel brochure is the living embodiment of Goffman's theory. The front stage is all curated adventures, and scenic views, while the backstage, the messy, insecure, unfiltered self, remains forever boarded up, under renovation. What makes them dangerous on dating apps isn't just the illusion, it's the contagion. You'll start to question your own life. You'll look at their profile and suddenly your Saturday spent doing laundry and binge-watching Netflix feels like failure. They transform your modest joys into pitiful inadequacies. And that's the red flag. Any relationship built on comparison is less about love and more about keeping score. Now, don't get me wrong, travel itself is definitely not the enemy. In fact, Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." But the travel brochure doesn't have a why. They have an itinerary, a gallery, and a desperate need to convert experiences into currency. They are tourists of their own lives, forever snapping pictures, but never living in the frame. Dating the travel brochure is like booking a vacation through a shady agency. It looks magical online, but when you arrive it's all under construction, overbooked and somehow smells faintly of regret. You think you're signing up for an adventure, but what you really get is layovers, lost luggage, and a gnawing sense that you're just filler until the next wanderlust post. And so here's the paradox. You'll still swipe right sometimes. Why? Because hope still whispers, maybe I'll be the one destination they actually stay for. But don't kid yourself. The travel brochure isn't looking for romance. They're looking for likes. And you, love, are just another stamp in their scrapbook of borrowed identity. And finally, the Perpetual Lothario, the patron saint of perpetual dissatisfaction. This isn't your garden variety flirt. This is the dopamine junkie who sees every dating app not as a tool, but as a slot machine, endlessly pulling the lever in search of that mythical perfect match. If Narcissus had been born in the era of Wi-Fi, he wouldn't have drowned staring into a pond. He'd still be swiping, hypnotized by his own reflection in 1,000 micro-interactions. You know this character the moment you encounter them. They're charming, attentive, quick with their good morning texts that feel like silk sliding into your DMs. But here's the catch. Their attention has the lifespan of a fruit fly. Before you've even finished laughing at their joke, they've already matched with 6 more people, 3 of whom are currently higher on their priority flirt rotation. To them, you're not a potential partner. You're a pit stop on the autobahn of endless novelty. Psychologists have a name for this itch. It's called the paradox of choice. Barry Schwartz wrote an entire book about how too many options don't make us freer, they make us miserable. The Perpetual Lothario is Exhibit A. With every swipe, their possibilities expand, but their satisfaction contracts. It's not that you aren't good enough, it's that the existence of someone else, somewhere, who might be better, gnaws at them like a cosmic mosquito. Studies back this up. A 2016 survey published in Computers in Human Behaviour found that 45% of dating app users admitted they stayed active on apps while already seeing someone. Not because they were unhappy, but because the apps made them feel like a better option was always one swipe away. They're like existential hoarders, always collecting, never committing. And you're just another shiny trinket on their digital shelf. Philosophers saw this coming centuries before dating apps. Epicurus warned us that the pursuit of endless pleasure leads not to joy, but to restlessness. The Perpetual Lothario embodies this restlessness. They're not chasing love. They're chasing the high of potential love, that sugar rush of what if. The problem is, they never metabolize it into something substantial. Like moths, they're addicted not to the flame itself, but to the promise of light. And make no mistake, this is not harmless fun. The collateral damage is you. While they're swiping for immortality, you're left with the unmistakable feeling of being auditioned, not cherished. Every conversation has a faint aftertaste of comparison, like you're competing in an invisible Olympics of desirability. And here's the cruelest part. They don't even realise they're doing it. Their addiction is invisible to them, obvious to you. Jean Baudrillard, the French philosopher of simulacra, once wrote, "We live in a world where there is more and more information and less meaning." Dating apps are his nightmare incarnate, and the Perpetual Lothario is its mascot. More matches, less meaning. More connections, less intimacy. They want it all, and in wanting it all, they sabotage any chance of truly having anything. And yet, paradoxically, they're terrified. Beneath the bravado lies a very simple fear: settling. To them, commitment feels like death, not of the body but of possibility. What they don't realise is that in chasing infinite possibility, they've sentenced themselves to infinite emptiness. Kierkegaard, ever the buzzkill, described this as the despair of possibility, where one is trapped not by lack of options but by too many, incapable of choosing, and thus incapable of becoming. So, the Perpetual Lothario isn't just a flake. They're a tragic figure, haunted by the ghost of someone better. They don't run from you. They run from the end of choice. And while you're wondering why they suddenly vanished after the third date, they're already spiralling into another cycle of hopeful swipes and hollow good mornings. Here's the paradox then. The Perpetual Lothario is desperate not to miss out, but in never choosing, they miss out on everything. They think they're playing the field when in reality, they're just pacing the sidelines, terrified of stepping into the game. They swipe for immortality, but what they get is infinite limbo. And maybe the most savage truth of all is this: they're not just bad for you, they're bad for themselves. Because in the end, love isn't about infinite options. It's about finally saying, enough, this is it. And that's the one thing they'll never do. So there you have it. The ghost broker, the walking LinkedIn profile, the bio phantom, the trauma dump truck, the philosopher king, the Perpetual Lothario, and the travel brochure. Each of these delightful archetypes is a swirling galaxy of red flags orbiting the black hole of your emotional time, devouring attention and hope in equal measure. They parade across your screen like a twisted cosmic carnival, and yet somehow you find yourself still scanning, still swiping, still hoping that maybe one of them will break the pattern and become something resembling a human being you actually want to date. The cosmic joke is that hope is basically the engine of this madness. We swipe, we match, we laugh at their memes, and we blush at their coy, good morning texts, fully aware that most of the time it's just a glitch in the system of human desire. Yet hope persists. Sometimes it's disguised as curiosity. Sometimes it's disguised as masochism. But mostly it's disguised as that tragically human belief that the next swipe might be different, that the next profile could be the one that actually gets it right. As Oscar Wilde said, experience is simply the name we give our mistakes. In the context of dating apps, that's a poetic way of admitting that we're all willingly throwing ourselves into chaos, again and again, fully knowing the odds are stacked against us. There's also a subtle absurdity to the entire enterprise. Think about it. Billions of people scrolling, judging, ghosting, dumping trauma, flexing achievements, and fading like shadows, all while algorithms quietly adjust the feed to maximize engagement. Love, patience, compatibility. None of these factors matter as much as time on app and click-through rates. What you're participating in isn't romance. It's a machine learning experiment designed to keep your dopamine flowing and your standards gently eroded. It's absurd, but somehow we play along, swiping for connection in a system that's built for distraction. And yet, Even knowing all this, even fully aware of the ghosts, the Lotharios, the LinkedIn profiles, we keep swiping. Because hope is addictive. Because the possibility of connection, no matter how slim, feels better than complete isolation. Because in the end, we all crave validation, intimacy, or just a little bit of chaos that makes us feel alive in this sterile, algorithmic world. Dating apps are savage. They are chaotic. They are messy. They are everything we fear about humanity, distilled into a glowing rectangle in our hands. So keep swiping, but know the red flags, recognize the patterns, and don't confuse attention with affection. Love might be patient and kind, as the old adage says, but dating apps, they are ruthless, algorithmic chaos. And remember, you deserve better than to be a statistic, a highlight reel, a forgotten memory in someone else's swipe right adventure. Guard your heart, wield your discernment, and never ever forget that in this parade of red flags, the only person who truly matters is you.